some guy was nailed for emasculating his wife's lover. The headline was Nut Job. When the day is done, 2 words tell the whole story. You can feel it, you can see it, you can laugh at it. You may say it's the Post, but as far as I'm concerned, it was a beautiful, beautiful piece of writing. It is a truly wonderful experience to sit at a keyboard and occasionally still a number 2 pencil on a legal pad and put words down and play with them and have them come out in a manner that transmits something more than just what the words are. I think it is an extremely important exercise in life, in work, in personal relationships, to be able to pause for a moment and look at words and understand what they are meant to do, and that is to transmit real meaning.
This podcast is part of the Blueberry Network, where listeners and podcasters come together. Find out more at blueberrywithnoease.com.
The Eat Sleep Right podcast is brought to you by generous grant from the Built on Dreams Media Network, with additional funding by the Sims Media Foundation, and from the generosity of listeners like you.
Stand by, please. Rolling on 6 now. On 6.
Welcome to episode 45. If you enjoy the Eat Sleep Right podcast, or if you had your own success in writing, I'd like to hear from you. Tell me about yourself and your story, and I may get back to you and have you as a guest on the Eat Sleep Right podcast. If you have any questions or comments, anything at all, please write me. The email address is comments@eatsleepright.net. Thanks for leaving me a short message about the podcast. I really do appreciate it. Once again, the email address is comments@eatsleepright.net. Nick Peters, welcome to the Eat Sleep Right podcast. It's great having you with me today.
Thanks a lot, Adam. I'm looking forward to it.
In your role as a news director, you invariably had to write a lot of the news that went out on the air. I'm curious about what was it like to work in a newsroom and be a news writer?
One of the wonderful things about working in a newsroom is the speed with which you have to write and create content. What that forces you to do is to think really, really clearly across multiple platforms, because if you're writing for radio, you are writing for listeners. If you're writing for a newspaper, you are writing for readers. If you are writing for television, or now for the web, you are writing for viewers. Each of those people takes what you have written, what you have created, in a different way. Writing for radio, we say you have to write word pictures. Writing for television, you write to the pictures. You complement them. You don't repeat what people are seeing. Writing for newspapers, you have to do all of it, because they are reading static words and are supposed to have images and impressions. So news writing, in its purest form, is a way to stretch words for very, very different audiences and trying to have a different impact on the people. It's a wonderful exercise. If properly done, it's a thing of real beauty.
Did you ever have any struggles in coming up with the headline or the storyline? Or did you ever have any difficulties in making the story and the headline gel?
Constantly. But the beauty of news writing is that once you've written it, you move on to something else. So you don't worry about the ones that are somewhat pedestrian or just get the work done. You remember and just rejoice and revel in those moments of glory when something just sparkled. It's a tremendous feeling of satisfaction that is really very difficult to explain if you haven't experienced it. Other artists, a novelist who writes a good book, a painter who paints a beautiful painting, musician and composer who composes a riff that just resonates, they know what we're talking about. It's really an artistic moment that lives for the moment.
Any moments in particular that still stand out with you? I came from the era of the New York Post when I was a staff photographer with Headless Body and Topless Bar and Escalator Swallows Woman.
But there are things of beauty in that, Adam. My favorite one recently from the Post, I believe it was the Post. I don't know if it was the Daily News or the Post, but I believe it was the Post. Some guy was nailed for emasculating his wife's lover. The headline was Nut Job. When the day is done, 2 words tell the whole story. You can feel it, you can see it, you can laugh at it. You may say it's the Post, but as far as I'm concerned, it was a beautiful, beautiful piece of writing. That's where the joy comes in. You do have to remember who your audience is, what is the medium, who you're working for. I'll give you one example, really crystallizes it. I had the good fortune of working network news, local news, newspapers, radio, TV, etc. Covered 3 Mile Island. I was on the news desk at CBS when the shuttle exploded with Krista McAuliffe, things like that. People say, what was your favorite moment in news? And they expect me to tell some great story. I probably could or should, but my recollection really is of one moment. I was writing for a noonday network news insert, which is probably about as pedestrian an insert as you can do, which is sort of a noontime news break from the network. And it's also the place where they relegate a lot of the old heads back in the 80s, the remainders of the Murrow boys from the glory days. The late Douglas Edwards, who was one of my heroes in the 50s, pre-Cronkite, was relegated to doing that. He was still a gentleman, and he was a wonderful person to write for. And I was supposed to write the lead story, and there was nothing going on that day. In news terms, there was nothing going on. There was no murder, rapes, pillages, disasters. It was just a quiet news day. The only thing that was going on was weather. It was snowing everywhere. I struggled with pictures of snow, trying to figure out what the heck am I going to write. This is where appreciating writing comes in, because I started thinking, I thought of music, I thought of poetry, I thought of something, and I thought of Samuel Taylor Coleridge, one of my favorite poets. And one of my favorite poems is Kubla Khan. In Kubla Khan did Xanadu, a sacred river ran through caverns measureless to man, etc., etc. And there's a wonderful portion where he refers to walls of snow and ice. And I'm thinking, snow, and ice, coast to coast, shining sea. And I wrote, from coast to coast, a shining sea of snow and ice, period. Now remember, I was writing to pictures. Pictures showing trucks stuck in blizzards, houses covered with snow, all this stuff. It was the lead line to the broadcast, and afterwards, there was a break. Douglas Edwards popped back into the newsroom, and he yelled out, who wrote that? And I raised my hand. And he looked at me and pointed at me and said, that was really good.
How did you feel when he said that?
I can still remember. It wasn't because Douglas Edwards said that. It was that moment of realizing that I had actually taken some words that are quite simple and applied them properly and effectively, where somebody who could appreciate the importance of words could appreciate what I'd done. I still think in many ways that was a great moment for me because it really crystallized what am I doing here. That's where writing ultimately is an extremely important thing. I know that this program of yours, Adam, is geared primarily toward authors, people who have written novels or maybe long articles and who write prolifically under their name and bylines or authorship. It's not what I do, but that doesn't minimize, A, the joy, and B, the importance of writing in my life. And I think, I hope, in more people than one might imagine. It is a truly wonderful experience to sit at a keyboard and occasionally still a number 2 pencil on a legal pad and put words down and play with them and have them come out in a manner that transmits something more than just what the words are. I think it is an extremely important exercise in life, in work, in personal relationships, to be able to pause for a moment and look at words and understand what they are meant to do, and that is to transmit real meaning. That meaning can be much more than just the literal meaning of the words. It can be the sound, it can be the meter, the pace, the length, the texture. I hope that is something that continues in our society, in this world of LOLs and OMGs, and which is fine. I'm not a millennial. I didn't grow up with that. I've adapted to it, but I still think there's real value in it.
What you describe, you sound like you're a painter in front of a canvas.
Well, I feel in some ways I am. The canvas is a piece of paper or an electronic screen. Maybe it's a smartphone. That's a little difficult to sort of, for someone like me to really get into because I still need to feel, at home I have bookshelves. Remember bookshelves, Adam? Floor to ceiling bookshelves. I remarried recently and moved into my new wife's home. I basically said, really, my dear, other than all the usual things, there's only one thing I really require. I have to have a library. She very kindly turned over a sitting room that she'd done her way and basically said, it's all yours, do what you want to do. And the first thing I did was wall-to-ceiling bookshelves with books on them, because I feel the need to be surrounded by books. I like the feel of paper. I like the smell of good leather binding. I like the sound and the weight of pages turning. It talks to me, and it helps me relax and think. It is very much like looking at a painting or listening to a piece of music.
Tell me about the importance of one's own writing skills.
Well, let's apply it to a couple of things. Let's get personal. For most people, in the end, they write for a number of personal reasons. A writer may write a book because he or she wants to get something out there off their chest. They've got to do it. They're driven. Or they have a message that they really want to get out to the rest of the world that's important. For most of us, though, writing is simply conveying a message to someone important or about something important, whether it's a letter proposing marriage or a proposal seeking someone to buy your services. In my case, writing has been a way to sort through my thinking. It slows me down, which, if you can listen to me speak, I can talk endlessly. Writing makes your brain slow down. You can't keep up with your thoughts. Even at a keyboard, sometimes you can't. But if you put words down on paper, and especially print them out, and look at them in hard copy, which is a different experience than looking at them electronically. Your brain receives it differently. Suddenly you see things. You edit. When I write letters, whether it's to my wife, friends, or to my children, I draft and edit the hell out of them. By the time they get that letter, it is a piece of work. It's just something you bang out like an email. That is because I think about it. I look at the words. I think about them. I read them aloud to myself. Try and imagine, what is the person who is going to receive this really thinking? How many times have you sent an email, Adam, pushed the send button and gone, I wish I hadn't sent that? Because you know deep down, it's basically just a bunch of words sent, and it doesn't convey the real tone or meaning. It sometimes seems too harsh or abrupt or whatever. I mean, it happens all the time. The beauty of a letter, especially, God forbid, sending a letter by post, is that if you work it, spend a few hours, put it aside, come back, look at it the next day, by the time it's finished, you've really developed a little piece of art. You send it in the mail, and I love sending letters in the mail because those words are sort of out there. They're gone from you. They haven't arrived where they're going yet. So they begin to take on even an additional meaning to me because I know what that person's going to get. They haven't gotten it yet. And by the time they get it, my hope is that when they read it, they will feel that it's something different, special, personal maybe, yes, that there's been a little extra bit of thought put into it. And I think you can take that and apply it to any number of things in your life. The power of the written word is amazing. Now, I'm going to take a liberty here. I'm going to pull out, I have this wonderful book here, which I've had for years, and it's called The Careful Writer, A Modern Guide to English Usage by Theodore Bernstein. In it, he writes about one of my heroes, Samuel Johnson. Here is a paragraph I'm going to read, which I think is applicable to this discussion. There is no need, then, for argument about the existence, the inevitability, and the desirability of change. There is need, however, for argument about the existence of such a thing as good English and correct English. Let us not hesitate to assert that the pencil was laying on the table and he don't know nothing are at present incorrect, no matter how many know-nothings say them. Let us insist that disinterested be differentiated from uninterested, not as a fetish, but as a means of preserving a word that is needful. Let us demand that words be placed in a sentence where they logically belong, provided only that they do not defy idiom, and let us not imagine that idioms come into being overnight. Let us do these things not to satisfy rules or to gratify the whims of a pedagogue, but rather to express ourselves clearly, precisely, logically, and directly, and to cultivate the habits of mind that produce that kind of expression. Let us, in short, Write carefully and correctly. As Dr. Johnson said more than 2 centuries ago, we have long preserved our Constitution. Let us make struggles for our language. I love that passage because it speaks to writing and mind.